Hi, David here, and welcome back to the channel, looking at the automatic writings of early 20th century medium James Padgett. I'm a little late posting this video, so apologies in advance. This is one that I should have uploaded last Wednesday, but I was away visiting family, and it's taken me a few days to get back into my routine. If you're watching this channel for the first time, or are unsure what automatic writing is, you'll find an explanation in video 1.2. I'll put an end card link to it at the end of this video, and a link in the description box below. In the last midweek video, 2.3, we looked at a couple of messages James received from two friends who shared very different experiences of what it was like for them in spirit. In video 2.1, we looked at a message James received from his old law professor, Joseph Salyards, and today we're looking at a follow-up message from Professor Salyards, which he wrote on February 25, 1915. In this message, Professor Salyards shares his thoughts on why some people experience difficulties in adjusting to life in the spirit world, and why some people start in what he calls a place of darkness rather than light. It's easy to assume that this depends on whether someone is a good or a bad person, and while there's some truth in that, it can also depend on whether or not they have learned anything about the life to come before they started it. As is so often true in life, there isn't necessarily one easy answer that explains everyone's circumstances. So let's have a look at what Joseph Salyards has to say. The message begins, "I am here, Professor Salyards. Well, I am very happy and desire to write you on some phases of spirit life that I have observed in my experience of progressing. I have noticed that when the spirit first comes into this life, it is very often in a condition of darkness, not realizing where it is or what its surroundings are. And in many instances, it requires quite a long time for the spirit to realize that it is not still of the earth. In many other cases, this is not the condition of the spirit, for it seems to have an immediate understanding of its condition and surroundings. I attribute the first mentioned condition to be due to the fact that when on earth, the mortal had no definite belief as to what the future life might be, and in many instances believed that the soul went into the grave with the body to await the great resurrection day. Some of your religious denominations are preaching that doctrine now, and the consequence will be that all those who believe the doctrine will experience the condition of darkness and the want of knowledge of the continuity of life that I have spoken of. The second class of spirits are those who appear to realize immediately that they have passed from earth to spirit life, are those who, while on earth, believed that when the spirit left the body, it passed immediately into the heavenly spheres, or into the opposite, the place of the wicked. This is interesting. Essentially what Joseph Salyards is saying is that when we die, we carry into spirit what we have been taught to expect. And depending on what that is, it can be a help or a hindrance. If someone is told that we go into an unconscious state, waiting for some future judgment day, they don't equate being conscious with being in spirit, so they struggle to accept where they are. If someone is told that life continues in some form, even if it means being assigned to heaven or hell, it is easier for them to accept where they are, even if the details of what to expect turn out to be misconceived. They don't face that same obstacle of thinking I'm awake, so I can't be dead. Therefore, I must still be somewhere on the earth. This might seem a bit simplistic, but I've often heard it said by people who have passed to spirit, and it really just goes to show how the things we take as true form part of our awareness, part of the way we create our own reality. The things we believe or trust in as true don't suddenly change just because we step out of our physical body. It's probably fair to say that since Joseph Salliard wrote this message to James Padgett, things have changed, in that those traditional beliefs in a far-off judgment day, or being assigned to heaven or hell, or purgatory if you're not all that bad, are not as widely taught and believed as they once were. A century later, we're probably more open to considering a range of possibilities as to what a continuing life in spirit might look like. But we still pass over with certain expectations according to what we've been told or chosen to believe. As Joseph Salliard goes on to say, while as soon as the spirits realise fully that they are no longer of earth, they commence to inquire as to where they are. And many of them ask questions that indicate that they are disappointed in not realising the expectations that they had while on earth. It is very difficult at times to convince them that there are no such places as the heavens and the hells as taught by the churches. For while our spirit world may be a heaven or hell to them, yet the heaven or hell that they expect to find is not here. Some, on the other hand, do not seem to understand that they have really left the earth, because they say, if we had left the earth life, we would know nothing. Quoting the Bible and some of the preachers, the dead know nothing. Ecclesiastes 9:5. I have been very much interested in observing these different phases of the departed spirit's beliefs and thoughts, which shows me the absolute necessity of mortals understanding the truths pertaining to life and death. This affords a very strong argument why spiritualism should be more extensively and earnestly taught to mortals, and why the false doctrines of those who teach either that the dead know nothing, or that the departed spirit goes either to heaven or to hell in the orthodox sense, should be shown to be not only a false belief, but injurious to mankind. Let the believers and teachers of spiritualism make greater and stronger efforts to refute these harmful teachings, and they will be doing the cause of truth and of man's happiness a great good. Here Joseph Salliard is making a plea for the use of mediumship to demonstrate a continuing personal existence, and to explore as much as we can about that future existence. Mediums can lack that focus by trying to be all things to everyone. Fundamentally, spiritualism is about exploring the afterlife and what that can teach us about how to live life well in this world, as well as the next, or in preparation for the next. Good mediumship demonstrates continuing personal existence beyond the death of the physical body, but also shows that this is simply a starting point for our investigations. Joseph Salliard continues, I am not only interested in these phases, but in all others which show that the spirits, even after they realise that they are still alive and must live as spirits, continue to ignore the fact that their orthodox teachings are false. Here Joseph is, of course, referring broadly to traditional Christian teachings. He continues, some say that they may yet be able to go back into the body and await the great resurrection day for deliverance, and say that they will soon see God, and that he will take them into his heavens, where they will find that eternal rest and peace that they were taught to expect when on earth. Even the wicked will look in dread to have some devil come and carry them to the hells, where torture of the most terrible kind awaits them, so they think. From Joseph Salliard's perspective, both decent folks and the wicked can be said to be in a state of spiritual darkness, in the sense of a lack of understanding of the spiritual worlds. He goes on to say, from all this, you may understand that we spirits who know the truth have a great work to do, to enable these darkened spirits to understand and believe that their false hopes and dreadful fears have no foundation in truth and will never be realized. Many spirits are engaged in doing this work, and these spirits are not necessarily of the higher kind, for many spirits who occupy the lower planes and have no real spiritual enlightenment are engaged in this work. This is an interesting point. It's very human to pay more attention to someone we can identify with, rather than someone who seems to be on a very different level from us. I guess we identify with people whose life experience and worldview seems similar to our own, and it's natural to assume that they will have something to say that is more relevant to us. It's easy to assume that more highly developed spirits will have very different interests or priorities, but it's worth remembering that even they will have had a starting point that might have been very similar to our own. Advanced spirits get there by advancing, or progressing, which Joseph Salliards himself has done. I am not now engaged in causing these dark spirits to see the truth, for I have progressed to higher things, and my mission is to teach the truths of the higher life, which I have been taught by spirits who live in higher spheres. To me, this work is one that is not only interesting, but gives me the great happiness that comes with the realization that I have been the means of leading a spirit to learn to love God, and to receive the happiness which the love of God gives to spirits. I tell you that this teaching is the grandest that I have ever engaged in all my life. When on earth, as I taught and saw the young mind develop, I found much happiness in the knowledge that I was doing some good. But here, in my teachings, when I see a soul develop, I realize that I am doing a spirit the greatest of all good. My work is not confined entirely to this teaching. I am also engaged in trying to assist mortals to a true conception of life here. I mean the spiritual part of this life. So although teaching about divine love and the difference it makes to the mortal soul now has priority for Joseph Salliards, this is the result of a process of growth and learning that he went through. So he knows it is still important to help people understand the basics, so that they too can begin to make that journey. One of the basics he mentions is very interesting indeed. No human is entirely without spirit influence, whether good or evil. Many are susceptible to the influence of the evil spirits, and for that reason the work of the good spirits is so much more difficult. The advantage, though, with the good influences is that what they suggest is truth, will never die, while the suggestions of the evil influences last only for a comparatively short time. When the material body gives up the spirit being which it clothes, that being will then be relieved of many of these natural tendencies to evil thoughts and deeds. And while this mere separation does not make a devil a saint, it makes it so much easier for the spirit to get rid of many of these evil tendencies, and makes him more susceptible to the influence of truth and goodness. This is an important thing to be aware of, though it might not be welcome or readily believed. A materialistic approach to life is very much the hallmark of what people learn from living in this world. People who pass to spirit and are unable to shake off this attitude can continue to try and influence people living their mortal life, and will have most success with people whose attitudes are most similar. That said, when people leave this temporary mortal existence behind, that can be the trigger to reassessing their attitudes to what matters. Although Joseph Salliards cautions, "You must not think from this As soon as they have been in the spirit world for a little time, they become good spirits. For this is not true. Many evil spirits have been in the spirit world for a great many years, and yet still have their evil thoughts and desires, and all the evil qualities of hatred, malice, envy, etc., as when they were on earth. Their giving up the earth life did not deprive them of their free will, the greatest force or power that God gave to mankind, except that of love. And many of these spirits refuse to exercise their will in a way that will enable them to rid themselves of these evil thoughts and desires. Let me stop now, as I am tired and you need to rest. So with all my love and best wishes, I am your old professor, Joseph H. Salyards. So the important takeaways from what Joseph Salyards has to tell us are that it is important to trust in the reality of the life to come, that it is an immediate continuation of the mortal life, we continue to be conscious, and that whoever or whatever you are or have been, there is always the possibility of change through personal development. It's often said that character is fate. That can seem a slightly depressing notion until you realise that character is something we can change, if we have the will to do it. As we've seen before, Professor Salyards mentions divine love as the greatest gift given to humans, greater even than personal will. This is what we focus on in the Sunday videos, 10.1 onwards, which are running in parallel with this series of messages from Padgett's friends and former colleagues in spirit. The next video in that series, this coming Sunday, video 10.4, looks at the condition of the world in the days when Jesus was present here and teaching, and the difficulties he faced in getting his message across. So I hope you'll find time to take a look at that one too. In the next video in this midweek series, video 2.5, I'll be taking you through another message from Joseph Salyards, delivered a couple of months later, in April 1915, setting out more of his experience of how people make progress in spirit. So I hope you'll join me for that. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, please do like it and subscribe if you haven't already, as it does help to introduce the channel to others. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.